Good morning and welcome to a special Sunday conversation edition of Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think the U.S. Open Cup is a golf tournament.
Ooh, yes, it kind of has that ring to it, doesn't it?
It does, and of course there is a golf tournament called the U.S. Open. However, the U.S. Open Cup, which we actually did have a recent blog post about, is essentially the United States version of the English FA Cup, where it's a knockout tournament that includes teams from all different leagues around the country. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Ross Devonport, who happens to be an announcer that's calling some of these games. Isn't that right, Arran?
Yeah, that's right. He's covering quite a number of the US Open Cup competitions. He's also a commentator in a couple of other sports as well, or a couple of other competitions as well. One of which was how we actually got in contact with each other. He was commentating on a Phoenix Rising game a couple of weeks ago, and I happened to reach out to him because I pride myself in being able to pick where someone's from their accent, and I could not with him, so I just had to go and get him on the show. He's a fascinating guy. His name's Ross Devonport, and I tell you what, he's a really good chap, and he knows also a little bit about rugby. So forewarned is forearmed. We are going to be speaking about rugby on our soccer show today.
Yeah, see, he's a great sport, too, because we do have a little bit of a surprise at the end of the show, but we will save that for later. But we really had a great chat with Ross, and we think that you're going to enjoy it. So let's go ahead and welcome him onto the show.
All right. On today's Sunday sit-down, we have a very special guest. He's an announcer for the USL Greenville Triumph and the US Open Cup, and one-time announcer for the Phoenix Rising. Welcome aboard, Ross Devonport.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
No worries. Really looking forward to this chat, mate. It's great for you to come on the show. Really excited.
Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thanks, Phil. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So first off, you and I are both rugby lads. The Rugby World Cup is coming up this fall. Are there any tips for us? Do you think Wales are going to run away with it?
Well, they look very good in the Six Nations. Obviously, defeated by England and won the whole thing. They got the best, in my opinion, the best coach in the world. And they're certainly going to be in the mix. But as we know, New Zealand might have a say in that, I think. And England starting to come around. We had a little bit of a funky patch the last year or so, but we're starting to come back around again. So it should be fun. Yeah, my dad's actually going down there to Japan, so I'm very jealous.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, man. I am too. So you don't rate Australia at all? I'm just going to let you know that I don't. I think we've got no chance.
Yeah, they have some great individual talent, but I'm not a big fan of their coach. And they've obviously had some off-the-field troubles over the last few years, I think. And rugby in Australia, I think, is struggling in general. So, I mean, I hate to see them the way they are at the moment. But they'll be back in a couple of years, I think. Listen, I'm a fan of good rugby. When the good teams are playing well, and which I think most of them are at the moment, except perhaps for Australia. South Africa really come around these last year or two. It's going to be a really fun World Cup.
I think it is. Really looking forward to it. You've actually just educated me just before the call here. So I said your rugby team is Wasps, and they were in London, but now they've moved to Coventry some time ago as well, as it turns out. Tell us how the support of rugby is different to football over there in the UK.
I mean, I grew up firstly as a rugby player. My dad played for Wasps before the professional era started in 1990. And I think rugby, compared to football, is just more of a community sport. You know, the rugby clubs they start with the youth levels. And obviously now it's a little different with some of the professional sides. Wasps being a good example. We still have an amateur club that exists in London that starts, from mini rugby all the way through adults. Obviously the professional clubs moved out to Coventry, but just a lot more of a community atmosphere. Okay. Obviously the top levels are a little different. You've got the four fully professional soccer leagues in England, and then rugby really the Premiership, the Championship is, I would say, mostly professional these days, but then after that drops off a little bit.
Right.
But yes, rugby's still quite a way behind, in viewership, but still a big community there. Obviously, a team pretty much in every small town there.
Sure.
Rugby is a big thing over there, and certainly in Australia. Of course, we are a football show.
We've digressed already.
So the thing that I think that our fans probably wouldn't know about first is who's your football club over in England? Who do you root for over there?
Well, funnily enough, my local team was Watford at the time. I grew up in Harrow, Middlesex, just about 5 or 10 minutes from Vicarage Road. But my grandma lived in Bournemouth, and that's where we went on summer holidays. And that's where I started watching games, was at Dean Court back in the late 80s. And so, yeah, my team's AFC Bournemouth. We've obviously come up quite a little bit since those days.
Yeah.
Sitting comfortably in the middle of the Premiership for the last 4 years, and it's been an exciting time. It's been an amazing few years.
We're big fans of Callum Wilson here on the show. And also, you mentioned Watford. Honestly, Elton John is a guy that we've really been wanting to get on the show. Did you happen to know him?
I don't, but I'm surprised he's not wanting to do some promo for his movie at this time. So maybe he might be willing to come on and have a few words.
Oh, we'll let him back up. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back to Bournemouth, like, they've got the smallest ground in the league, these guys. How do they compete with the big guys in the Premier League? It's quite remarkable, that story.
It is. I mean, I would say, I don't know the exact percentage, but obviously only a small percentage of our income comes from, well, any team in the Premier League comes from your match day revenue. True. I'd say we're the smallest one regarding that in the Premier League, but the TV money's been a big help. We've managed to retain, a good chunk of our team. Came up from League Two, League One to Championship, and then all the way to the Premiership. But it's diminished every year as we've gone on. We've obviously just made an early signing this week. As soon as the window opened, $13 million. Lloyd Kelly, $13 million, £13 million defender, from Bristol City. I mean, Eddie Howe has obviously been a major part of us being able to compete. Despite our lack of income. Obviously one of the most highly rated English managers in the game.
Absolutely.
And every year there's rumors of him going elsewhere, whether it's be the Tottenham or Arsenal. But the fact that he did leave us at one point to go to Burnley and then end up coming back. And I would understand at one point if he left, but I think he wants to get this club as high as he can. This year, we came very close to beating our best ever total, despite all the injuries we've had. We lost almost 3/4 of the squad at one point, I think. And Eddie Howe is the heart and soul of this club. And I think he's probably the main reason we've been able to compete. But obviously talks now of a new ground coming soon.
Okay.
Perhaps next couple of years, we've got a new training ground coming as well, which we've got to move that first before they potentially build the stadium in Kings Park, which is where Dean Court is now. Sorry, Fitness for a stadium. Sorry, whatever the hell we call it now. I can't keep it.
Now, you mentioned Eddie Howe and his coaching opportunities. And one thing that we've been hearing is that he's a guy that might manage the English national team one day. Do you see that in his future at all?
I think, honestly, that may be the only reason he would ever leave Bournemouth, but perhaps to take the national team job. But he was an Everton fan growing up, but I don't see him going there anytime soon. The rumours of Pochettino leaving keeps being linked with them. Obviously, when Wenger left, he was being linked with the Arsenal stuff. I think he would only ever leave perhaps for a top 6 job maybe, but the stress level of taking any of those jobs compared to Bournemouth, where you're always going to be expected to perhaps finish halfway up the table and not to compete, but anything you do above that is great. Meanwhile, you take a top 6 team on, and the reason he left Burnley was, I think, a lot of family stress. His wife preferred living down in Bournemouth. His mom lived down here, lived in Bournemouth, and he's definitely one of the best young English managers out there. I definitely think there's a chance of potentially getting an England job down the road. But Gareth Southgate's doing an awesome job at the moment anyway, so I don't think anybody's really too concerned about him going anywhere.
No, it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, I mean, you do raise a good point for our American listeners. Bournemouth is on the south coast of England, and it's a lovely town. I've been there. It's got a little beach there and everything. I would rather Bournemouth over Burnley any day.
Yes, I think you're not alone.
A little better weather.
Yeah. All right, so as you know, we're the show for Americans who want to know more about the English game. You're a bit the other way around, aren't you? You're an Englishman who knows a lot about the game here in the US. Tell us how you got here.
So originally my dad obviously played rugby for Wasps, Northampton, and some other teams, and then worked for his main job. Obviously then at that time, your main job wasn't rugby. Everybody had an outside job, even at the top level. It's just an amateur sport. Mm-hmm. Maybe people got paid a little bit here and there, obviously for gas and things like that. But he worked for Guinness, the brewer, obviously. Oh, wow. Of one of the best beers in the world, and they opened an office here.
The best, in my opinion.
There you go. And but they opened an office here in Florida in 1992, and we were only supposed to be here for 3 years. I was 16 at the time and finished high school in England. Had to do 2 more years of high school when I got here because you finished high school at 16. Right. So I'm a veteran of 6 years of high school, and then we were supposed to stay for 3 years, and the parents loved it, and we've been here ever since.
Right on.
Guinness, give us a call.
Right?
One of the big things for us on this show is the USL. We would say we definitely cover the USL more than the MLS on this show, being for Phoenix, and we're all season ticket holders with Phoenix Rising ourselves. And right now you commentate for the Greenville Triumph, who are in USL League One, which is the third tier of the American soccer pyramid. How did you get started over there with them?
So I worked at CBSSports.com for 6 years. I was a fantasy writer over there. I was a golf producer, and a coworker of mine there, in a roundabouts way, ended up working for this company that's producing the USL games out of Dania Beach here. So we have a whole studio here where we do all the USL Championship and League One games, as well as some NWSL. And we also do some work as well for the MLS. And he's one of the head producers there. And he just asked me when we first started a couple of years ago if I wanted to come and try this. He knew I had a good background. My background in that time was mostly in print journalism. But obviously, I have the accent, apparently. So people tell me. And I knew enough about the game. And he asked me to come and try it out. So the first couple of years, I was doing color for championship games here and there, once or twice a month, working with a variety of play-by-play guys, which was really interesting. Guys that have backgrounds not just in soccer, but in all sorts of professional sports. I did a game with Joe Zagacki, he's the radio voice of the Miami Hurricanes football team. I did a game with the previous Dave Lamont, the previous radio voice for FAU football. So I got to work with a bunch of professionals. Didn't have their background in soccer per se, and then this year, obviously, when USL League One came around and they needed to expand a little bit, he asked me if I would be willing to do all 14 home games for the Greenville Triumph, along with my play-by-play guy, Chris Makoviak, and I jumped on the chance to do it, and it's been excellent so far. They're a very good team. We obviously have John Harkes on board, Soccer Hall of Famer, which helps a bit.
Yeah.
And the management team there is very good as well. So they love us and we love them, and a nice win last night for them.
Yeah, very good.
So now, one of the things that you had mentioned in there was the expansion of the USL. This kind of brings me to a question. It wasn't on the sheet that Arran sent over, but it actually had to do with a conversation that happened on Twitter yesterday. There's a bit of a controversy going on in the EFL right now, where they're allowing some of the Premier League under 21 teams to start playing at that Check-a-Trade trophy. There's of course a fear that at some point in time that the Premier League may pressure the EFL to have, for instance, the Arsenal under 21 team, for example, play in League Two or something like that. And of course, in that, the USL, the structure does have where you have these number two teams, especially in USL League One. What do you think about a business model where you have what are essentially farm teams competing against independent teams of the same league? Is that a good business model overall?
It's a very interesting concept. I was talking to Chris Makoviak, my play-by-play guy, the other day, just about the differences in the setup between England and here, especially now with a lot of these USL teams coming in with the academies, which I really think is going to be the base of improving US soccer as a whole. Is getting the kids the chance to play as best level as they can without potentially having to pay thousands of dollars as some of these travel teams do. It's going to be very interesting. I know I'm more of a fan of the independent route. I think this year it's been interesting because North Texas, as being an affiliate of FC Dallas, are in first place in USL League One. And historically, as you guys know, in the championship, the two sides, the affiliate sides, have struggled historically, which is a reason why a couple of them came down to League One. But I like it. It's fun. I mean, I like the fact that North Texas, I know I'm watching kids that are there for good reason, that they're potentially MLS prospects, while some of these other League One teams don't have that. They have some guys that have tried to, they've been drafted but haven't made it. A little older, perhaps trying to keep their career. It's a great mix in League One and the championship as well. I see a lot of stuff about whether it's, obviously we're going to have it down here soon with Inter Miami and their affiliate team. A lot of I've obviously come from a fan of being a Strikers fan and a Fusion fan before that. Two teams that obviously Fusion were MLS at that time, but the Strikers weren't affiliate. We're an independent, non-affiliated team, and it was great fun. But I also like the fact that if you are a fan of an affiliate team, you can watch players come through and then end up watching them on TV, on national cable TV on the MLS, and it's what America's all about. The minor leagues. I worked for a minor league baseball team for a year, and those guys, the Yadier Molina played for that team, and now I get to watch him play in the pros. It's just I think teams, I think some cities get disappointed they end up with an affiliate team, but I think they'll grow to love it, just like Sevierville, Tennessee has grown to love the Tennessee Smokies.
I'm glad you brought up baseball, because that was actually what I was mentioning to Arran a little bit earlier, is that in baseball you have the farm teams where it's one league owned by all the AAA teams have a major league affiliate. You don't have the independent teams mixed in, and certainly I think my main concern is whether or not the Premier League would ever pressure the USL to have for instance, like I was saying, the Arsenal under 21 team or the Manchester United under 21 team playing in the EFL, and I just think that would be a bad thing for the independent clubs in England, and I was wondering what your thoughts would be on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been this way as it is now for so long. It would certainly be a big shock to the system. And I think these smaller teams in smaller cities would perhaps raise a stink and saying, "Look, I'm having to come and play Arsenal U23s. It's not fair." The wage bills, and I think the wage bills at the USL level has also been a problem. Certain teams had a lot higher wages. I'm sure are getting some assistance, from those MLS clubs. But I like keeping the English system the way it is. We've obviously had some talk in rugby lately about ring fencing as well, which I don't think soccer would ever come to. In that you find those 20 Premier League teams and they stay in the Premier League. I hope it never comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
That rugby or soccer, to be honest with you, because you don't get the stories like Exeter in rugby that come up from it. It doesn't give. There's that dream of these teams that get started by a businessman that want to grow up, move up, and I think it'd be better off just keeping it as it is and having. I know there's a Premier League, U23 or reserved league they have, which Bournemouth aren't a part of yet, but hopefully we get to. So I think that's the best way to do it and keep it as it is. There's an existing system set up there already that's been there for decades. So I hope they keep it as it is.
Yeah. I can imagine, football club owners such as, I don't know, Andy Holt might have a few words to say to that.
And he's the one that's kind of leading the fight for the outspoken guy that's leading the fight to make sure that things do stay as fair as possible for the smaller clubs.
Yeah. But, here in America, and I think you raise a really good point there, Ross. The zoomed out view on having affiliate teams is that you're developing talent here across the country. They're getting match ready, and they're getting games, That's a good thing. That's got to be a good thing, has it not?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the better the more professional soccer there is in this country, the better.
Yeah.
And I think we're talking about the academies, and you've got to get these kids, especially with football on the downslide of things with the concussion worries, and baseball is down, and basketball, I think the NBA is fine, but I think participation in basketball is in certain areas of the country, especially down here in South Florida. We've got to get these kids into soccer as young as possible and say, like, here's the pathway.
That's the word.
To being a professional, and opportunities to play professionally are there far more now than they were 5 years ago before the USL really came to what it is today under Jake Edwards. He's done an amazing job, and it's just going to keep expanding over these next few years with USL, especially with League Two, the ownership now of League Two as well, on the semi-pro side of things. He's done an amazing job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you also commentate on the US Open Cup games as well. For mine, and tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like that's a competition that doesn't really seem to have the cachet the main league competitions here in America. What do you think that is, and what do you think people are missing out by not supporting the knockout competition?
Oh, man, I mean, I think I'm a prime example in the US Open Cup. I mean, we had Miami FC, almost go all the way last year. Right. It was super exciting, and this is obviously the first year I've been involved as a broadcaster, and just the amount of storylines. I mean, the first game I did involved Lone Star FC out of Philadelphia, which is a refugee team full of Liberians, players from Sierra Leone and Mali, that moved here to escape big time troubles in this country, and soccer's brought them together and they gave Reading AC a run. And you should have tied the game. A goal, it was incorrectly called back. And US Soccer on their website's done an amazing job with bringing us some of those stories. And now with ESPN Plus and Vista World League coming in to provide every single game. I mean, Americans love playoffs. This is the
exactly.
They love knockout games. And the fact that I know I can go to a game, and this is, if we don't win this game, we don't move on, and we do win it, we do move on. There's nothing better than knockout soccer. And I think I'm sure we'll see in the numbers of viewerships and the fact that every single game now, from the first round proper is available.
Yes.
And
that makes a big difference. Yeah.
Oh, it does.
I was going to say that ESPN Plus is the best thing to happen to American soccer that I can think of.
Oh, for the amount of value you get for $5 a month, and I'm not trying to be a shill, but the amount of value in soccer leagues you get for that $5
with the product.
It speaks for itself. I mean, for $10 a month, it would have been amazing value. And I've seen people on Twitter complaining, especially as fans of some of the smaller USO OC teams that entered, the amateur sides and the semi-pro sides, complaining, well, I don't like to have my soccer stuck behind a paywall.
Right.
So, but if you can't afford $5 a month to get that amount of soccer and to watch your team, well, obviously we'd love to see you go to the games, but no, it's amazing value. And coming from a country where the FA Cup, perhaps it's been interesting for me because coming as a Bournemouth fan back in the day, getting to the third round of the FA Cup was one of our biggest thrills, and being able to play a Premier League side. Now it's turned completely around, and we don't take it as seriously as some teams, much to the chagrin of our fan base, because Eddie Howe, we don't have one of the deepest rosters, and especially when we have injuries like we've done. But we've seen Watford. Obviously, we'll forget what happened this weekend. But seeing a team that's been in the similar leagues to us over the years get to the FA Cup final, even though they got hammered, it was great to see them get there, and something we'd like to do. Even if you finish 14th in the league, getting to the FA Cup final is still a thrill for many fans. So no, US Open Cup, I'm hoping as these years go by, and I'd like to see the MLS teams come in perhaps a round earlier to give us more chances of those semi-pro teams and amateur sides being able to play an MLS side. But there's obviously every year we get more and more teams getting involved. I'm sure they'll figure a way to have that happen. But no, it was a great thrill to do a couple of games, and I'll be doing Memphis against Hartford in the next round. So that's going to be fun.
Right on. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. Just going back to, those knockout competitions and how they can cause some upsets. You mentioned to me the other day a team that I'd never heard of before, but it was the Florida Soccer Soldiers. It's a little unfortunate, that name. Huge upset there, wasn't there?
Yeah, actually, the first time I heard of the US Soccer Soldiers, I have one of my best friends is a big Peñarol fan out of Uruguay. His family's from Uruguay, and he's a huge Peñarol fan. They just came here to do preseason camp for the first time, and one of their games they played was against Florida Soccer Soldiers. I'd never heard of them. Of course, at that point, I looked up a little bit about them, and being mostly South American-based team, South American players, and what a story those guys have come up. I saw they were trying to do some fundraising for some grass boots, because apparently they do most of their playing here on turf, and they all play with turf boots, and obviously don't have the biggest budget, so they've been trying to raise some money on Twitter. I saw the other day for turf, but that's one of those great stories that sums up the US Open Cup. And they went up to Charlotte, and one of the better USL Championship teams. An amazing story.
I love those stories.
That's what the Cup's all about, man. The US Soccer did a great job on their website, and I could have sat there and read those. They had some great writers, and lengthy stories about some of these clubs and their backgrounds. It's what it's all about. You put some mates together, and I think I said during the broadcast, you join a league, and then next year you can be playing an MLS team.
Right, crazy, isn't it? Love it.
That's exactly what we're all about here on this show, and on our website, is telling those stories of those teams that aren't those same big six that you hear about all the time. And those are really the interesting stories and what we like to call proper football. And the Florida Soccer Soldiers, that's the perfect example of what we call proper football here on the show.
There you go. Amazing story. And then the Rayados, that did their game last week, another great story of guys that played college soccer together, and they decided they want to keep playing and now develop this club. And obviously one of the local colleges there, a thriving NJCAA program, won back-to-back national titles, and they're bringing those kids over. There's just so many stories like that. You could just
I saw a burrito restaurant was giving Fresno a hard time last week. So. And the other thing is if you look back at the history of the tournament, because of course professional soccer as we know it in the U.S. kind of goes back to about 1993. That's when you had Richmond and Charleston, who are still around, and then that was when the MLS first founded, and they've kind of dominated since 1996. But if you look back to like the 1960s and 70s, you'll see that there were teams like the Philadelphia Ukrainian Americans won it 4 times back in the 60s. And then there was like the New York Greek Americans came along, and then they were the dominant team for a few years. So there's just so much history in 114 years of this tournament. And I really think that the big thing that happened 2 years ago is when they made it a qualifier for the CONCACAF Champions League. hopefully that, along with, like you said, the coverage, is going to help the tournament to get a little bit more exposure and also maybe a little bit bigger payout, because right now 300,000 is what goes to the winner. The furthest advancing team from each league gets 25,000. I think that if they were able to increase those payouts a little bit, that you might see some of the bigger teams taking it a little more seriously in future years.
No, the history's been a great part of it. I love how in our broadcasts they start off now. I don't know if you watched any of the games the last couple of weeks, but they start off with some clips from games going way back over the years in the U.S. Open Cup, and I think a lot of the modern fans just don't realize the history of this tournament. I'm hoping that with these games being on TV, we can continue to bring some of the history of this tournament. Unfortunately, Richmond, who I just did yesterday, lost in the second round, but they got a great history in the program. I think their fans realize that as well, and it's an exciting time for U.S. Open Cup.
Absolutely. As we've said many a time on this show here, if you're not watching these knockout competitions, sure, it might not have the big names and you might not recognize some of the teams, but if you're not watching it, you're really missing out on some quality football. It's great stuff to watch.
If you're somebody in the U.S. that enjoys the March Madness college basketball tournament, that this would be right up your alley.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking the other day. I work part-time at the airport, and I was sitting there watching the penalty kicks from the first night live. I was like, 3 games went to penalty, so I was switching from game to game to game, and just as a neutral fan, everybody loves penalty kicks. So that was a great thing to do.
We don't really here in Phoenix.
Understandable.
Yeah, we were. My next question here was talking about Phoenix Rising, because it was you commentating on on one of the Rising games. I forget who we were playing. It prompted me to reach out to you. So during the week, we lost on penalties to New Mexico United. I don't know. I hate penalties. I'm from that camp that firmly hates them. But since then, they've kind of rebounded and they smashed absolutely lights out for Vegas last night. And I was going to say, what's happening with the Phoenix team? What's going right with the Phoenix team? And what do you think about the outfit here?
I've sort of been a semi-Phoenix Rising fan. My wife's from Mesa, so I actually took my kids to a game last season. That was the first actually USL game I went to in person. I love the little stadium and obviously the Drogba connection. And I think I've done 2 Phoenix Rising games. I did one a couple of years ago in Drogba knocked in a free kick in injury time, I think it was, to win it. Yes. And I got some grief on social media for saying he looked tired and his hands were on his knees. And then of course he started. Everybody was giving me some grief. But listen, I think as USL Championship teams go, Phoenix Rising have been one of the better squads, and they've obviously the crowd has been awesome there in Phoenix. I think that city was dying for a team that was going to be competitive. It's a soccer hotbed. And I think, unfortunately, for Rick Shantz, the previous history of Phoenix has sort of come back to haunt them a little bit this season because, obviously the turnover, the loss of Drogba, and some other players leaving. I think they'll be fine. I mean, looking at the Western Conference standings, I think people were overreacting a little bit. I know I did the game against, obviously, Orange County, who are a decent squad as well. And I think it's still very early in the season. I don't think it's time now for the Phoenix Rising fans to get too worried about where they're going to finish. There's plenty of talent on that squad. I know Rick Shantz has been getting a little bit of grief, but I think they'll just be fine. They'll find themselves in the playoffs, and that's all you can ask, and then go from there.
Yeah, you're right. And I was surprised after the win last night that we're up into third. And I'm like, really? How do we get up there? And then I think it was your co-commentator from the other night just mentioned it. He's like the Western Conference basically taking, knocking 10 bells out of each other. So, a win will take you up quite a long way in that competition.
It's a lot like League One in England was this year, where every team is just kind of between second and 20th is separated by like 5 points.
Yeah. But I think that's what you want. You want that competition. You want to be going down to the last few weeks with almost the entire league with a chance of getting potential playoff spot. I know this year with the expanded playoffs, that's almost the case. But there are a few teams that are kicking at the bottom. But I think I'd rather, as a fan of any team, I'd rather be going out there every week and hoping to be a tough match, and every win being one that really counts. Not just kicking Tacoma or whoever else we need to play at the bottom end of the table. I think Phoenix will be fine.
Yeah. Yep. Good. I agree. I'm not one of those ones. Yes, I was. Sorry, guys. On that, so who's your US-based team? Who do you support here?
Well, obviously, I didn't have one when I came here initially, and then we got the Fusion, and that didn't last particularly long, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And then we had the Strikers, and both teams with ownership problems, and they've kind of vanished away. I'm not quite on the Inter Miami FC bandwagon just yet. I think I'll certainly be a semi fan, but my brother lives in Seattle. He's a Sounders season ticket holder, so the Sounders have had a soft spot for the Sounders since they've started, and been to a couple of games up there. And obviously, Greenville triumphed being their home commentator, and they've got a great ownership group there. Obviously, John Harkes, getting to talk to him every other week is amazing, just with his base soccer knowledge and his background as a commentator. So obviously, I got a slight soft spot for the Triumph, although I have to be as non-biased as I can on broadcast, because obviously our broadcasts are mostly being seen by the away teams. That's where my allegiance lies at the moment. We'll see if Inter Miami can get their act together. It's been a complicated process getting the team down here, and a lot of fans are sort of just tired of the years of waiting. But it's starting to come along now, and we're obviously going to have this stadium up here in Fort Lauderdale, which is a little closer to my house where I watch the Strikers play. Well, the new stadium that's been built there, and going to get to watch them up here for a couple of years. That might help, I think. Back in, will be interesting to see who they bring in. That's going to be the key. Once that first signing comes in, the excitement will really start to take off. For
sure. Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch. I know we spoke a little bit about rugby in the beginning of the show here, but how do you survive on a rugby light diet here in the US?
Well, it's interesting. You need to go back and watch the replay of last night's game, by the way. Max Hemmings, for his yellow card, literally rugby tackled the guy, and I got to mention rugby during the broadcast, so it's quite amusing. But, I mean, it's been great now that NBC, I mean, just as they have for soccer, it's been an amazing transformation for rugby here in the US. We get every Premier League, every Premiership game live, which they don't in England. Same with the Premier League soccer. They don't get every game. We get more games here than anybody. And I stay involved with the local soccer rugby scene. I referee games down here in South Florida, and I actually assign all the referees for the state, and I try to get around. I come out for Vegas. I've been in Vegas the last 2 years for the Sevens.
Excellent.
And there's a big tournament around there. And obviously now with every year, I remember when I first moved here, trying to find rugby on TV anywhere was even 5 years ago, to be honest, it was almost impossible. Flow Rugby and NBC have really done a great job of bringing it here, and it's a growing sport. I mean, the fact that I can sit there on a weekend and watch, whether it's Super Rugby or the Premiership on NBC or even Sevens. The Sevens series is doing so well, especially with the Americans having the amazing season that they're having. So no, I survive just fine. I keep involved locally, and as much to my wife's chagrin, I try to watch as much as I can on TV.
Yeah,
it's a great time to be a rugby fan here. There's no doubt. The World Cup for once is going to have every game on, which even 2 World Cups ago I think was a difficult thing to find.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now, I did come into the show knowing that you guys were going to talk some rugby. And, of course, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking, I'm not going to be too much good at the rugby talk because I do only know the 2 things about rugby. One is that Gilbert invented the shape of the ball, and the other being that Matt Chateau is an overrated wanker.
Leave it alone. He's all right.
There's a few of those on the Wallabies.
Hey, Ross, careful there.
But I did actually get a rugby-related activity planned, and in fact, we're going to play rugby on the show today, or more specifically, you two are going to play rugby on the show today. I will be the referee. Here's how it works: is we're going to have rugby because I've put together a list of several different types of rugs from around the world, and we're going to have a spelling bee where each of you are going to spell. We have 5 different rugs from around the world, and we're going to see how good you guys are at spelling. And if we're tied after the first 5, I do have a bonus at the end. So, Ross, since you're the guest, we're going to let you go first, and we'll start with an easy one. Our first rug is Berber. How do we spell Berber?
Oh, I'm going to say, oh, man. Is it ease or use? I'm going to say, oh, man. I'm going to say, oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to say Burber.
Arran?
I was going to go with all these. Berber.
Well, Arran, you got the first one. It is ease, and I'll tell you, Ross, I would have guessed use myself. But plenty of time to catch up. Our next rug is Saxony. And go ahead and go first again, Ross. How do you spell Saxony?
Well, being as close as we are to France in England, I'm going to say Saxony.
Whoever goes first, if you get it, then you get the point. And then so at At this point, we'll give Aaron a first shot here, and the next rug we have is Ecot.
Ecot. I feel like
I believe that it was a Turkish weave when I looked this one up.
Ooh, okay. I feel like this is one of those ones that's going to have a tricky letter in there somewhere. I'm going to go with, you know what? ECOTT.
We're going to give you a shot at this one, Ross.
Oh,
well, that was going to be my initial guess. But when you mentioned Turkish, the Turks love their K's, so I'm going to go EKOT.
Well, you were right on the K, but it's actually IKAT.
Ah.
How is it? How do you spell it?
IKAT.
Oh man, I was miles off. Okay.
well, we're still tied at 1, and we've got 2 more to go, and then we've got the tiebreaker, and this one is a little bit more common. So I believe that it's Ross's turn to go first, and the rug is freeze.
Oof. It's not common in my rug knowledge.
Could you use it in a sentence, please?
I was tired of the ugly shag rug, so I refloored with some freeze.
Let's go FREIS.
Yeah, give it a go, Aaron.
I'm going to go with FREIZ. Or Z for the American audience.
You're actually very close, but it's FRIE. So that would be Foxtrot, Romeo, India, Echo, Zebra, Echo. So all right, well, we've got one more here, and this one is, I believe, an Indian weave, and this one is pronounced Kaleem.
Could you spell it out for me?
Nice try, Aaron. Nice try.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thought I might get him there. Who's going?
I believe that's you, Aaron. Ross took the last one.
What's the word again?
Kaleem.
Kaleem?
Kaleem.
I have no idea, man. I can't even hear what you're saying, I'll be honest with you. Colleen. COLEENE.
No, not quite. Ross, you want to give it a go?
I'm gonna go with K again. I'm gonna go KOHLEME.
No, it's KILIM.
Okay. This is a rad segment. I think
that we have determined that rugby may not be your guys' sport, and maybe we should stick to football. So let's go ahead and call this one a draw, unless they are really looking to go to the penalties, because this last one is a tough one.
Okay, all right.
I may as well just throw it out there. The tiebreaker, and this one is Durries. Durries. And then I'll tell you, there's a silent letter in there at the beginning, if that helps you at all.
Yeah. No.
Who wants to go first? I'll let you guys decide.
All right, over to the guest.
All right, so there's a silent in there. So I'm going to go DH.
Yes, you got it. You got that one.
URIZ.
Very close. You had the first 4 right.
DHURIES.
Very, very close, except for there is a second R. It's DHURRIES. Durries.
All right. Is this competition over now?
This competition is over, and we're gonna call this one a draw. Do they have draws in rugby?
They do. They do. Yeah, you have to, as a referee, if you allow a draw, you have to drink a fruity drink in the social afterwards. If you allow a draw, so I'll make sure the next game I referee, I drink a fruity drink just for you boys.
Fantastic. All right, there we go.
All right, and next time we get together, you guys can can try to kick a ball between the goalposts to settle it or something like that. We'll plan on
crossbar.
There you go. Next time, I'm definitely have to meet up with you guys next time I come out there get up for a Phoenix Rising game in person
absolutely.
again.
Please do. We'd love to catch up and have a beer.
Absolutely, we love having you out to a Phoenix Rising game and talk some football and hang out. It's such a good party up there. They got the Red Fury and the Banditos. The supporters just really it's such a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
And maybe down the road here you'll find yourself with a Major League Rugby team at some point and expanding again next season. And hopefully we'll have one down here as well. It'd be great to see.
That'd be awesome.
I'd start to know a thing or two if I could get to a game.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can sit down and we can do what we did with the Football World Cup in 2014. We can sit down and watch a few matches in the pub, and I can tell you what's going on half the time.
just some crazy times, unfortunately, with the World Cup being in Japan. I'll have to, a little easier, perhaps, on your end with late night stuff rather than in the middle of the night. But
yeah, true. Yeah, that East Coast time difference will make a bit of a rough viewing there, I suppose, won't it?
Yeah, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Ross?
No, I just appreciate it, guys, and the podcast network. At the local soccer level in America has been great. It's been a great asset to us broadcasters as well, getting to know the teams and listening to guys that attend the games. And I appreciate the time and effort that you guys put into the podcast. And I'm looking forward to continuing listening to the series as you guys develop.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. As we develop, we're only about 30 episodes strong, but I feel like we've come quite a long way.
Yes, thank you so much, and we really appreciate your time, and also I appreciate you being a good sport on the rugby. That was a little unplanned, but I hope to get a good laugh out of that. We'd love to have you again on the show soon. Maybe we'll check with you around the mid-season kind of break. That's here things are going on the East Coast side of the USL.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, boys.
All right, bye. All right, so that was Ross Devonport, everyone. He's a gentleman and a scholar, and he's certainly a good sport for putting up with having to spell on rugs on a soccer podcast. I never thought I'd see the day, but here we are. Thanks, Ross. Really appreciate it, mate. I don't think you'll be coming back on.
Well, I hope he does, because that was such a good chat. And thanks again, Ross, for being such a good sport with that impromptu game of rugby.
Yeah, rugby. It took me a moment there. I was like, spelling bee, rugby. Yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that. We're all in. Let's go. Let's do it.
Well, we thank you, as always, for joining us. And as always, for my brother from down under.
My mate from State 48.
And we will, of course, have Matt Robards back with us on our next regular episode, which will be back at our normal time next week. And if you haven't had a chance to, make sure you also check out our interview that we recorded yesterday with Callum Johnson from Accrington Stanley.
That's a good one.